All right. Thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of conversation about opioids, the epidemic that is affecting so many people all across the country. My name is Latoya Stillman, and if you all are just now switching over to our Facebook page, perhaps you just saw our special that ran with some of the top experts here that we found to talk about how we can help families conquer the thing and protect their loved ones from this horrible addiction that, again, is ravaging families all over the country, really. And joining me now to talk more about this is Ashley Webb. She runs Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation. So we want to thank you, Ashley, for joining us. We also have Bob Vickery. He's with the PACT Coalition, as well as Dan Neal. Dan Neal is a DA agent at the Las Vegas office, who we want to thank you as well. And then we have Barb Collins also joining us. She's the principal at Mission High School here in Las Vegas. So thank you all for taking the time to talk about this very important subject. We're just going to go ahead and get right into it. And my first question is going to be for you, Ashley. And I want to ask this. You work with the Mark Wahlberg Foundation, as we've noted. Why did the foundation come to be, and what is your primary mission, and why do you think it's so important to tackle this issue?
Thank you. So our foundation exists to remove barriers to success that young people might encounter. And it became very apparent a while back that this epidemic is a significant barrier to success, whether it be something that young people themselves are dealing with, a substance use disorder, or whether their families are dealing with it. And certainly every community is dealing with it. So Jim Wahlberg, our executive director, who is Mark's brother, has been making films on this topic for some time. And there was one film called If Only that really did gain a lot of traction. A lot of communities were very interested in having us in to show the film and talk about this very important issue. And it's become something that our foundation has been very dedicated to working with over the past few years.
All right, and to the end, I know that Robert, you're also dedicated to this. Can you tell me in what way do you contribute to trying to tackle this problem that it seems like it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, if you're young, if you're old or white, if you're Black, it seems like it affects everyone?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you for having me on. Yeah, I mean, we cannot state enough with the opioid epidemic and how it's morphing into an even more critical issue. Right now, we have 2.1 million people that probably we can estimate or struggle with opioid, but more importantly, now we're seeing fentanyl being introduced to the market. And in Nevada, our fentanyl injury and death by overdose are up 200%. And those kind of figures are just startling. So PACT is we work on prevention and education in our community, and we try to intervene before it gets to crisis. But most of the work that I do in the community as a community outreach person centers on trying to help existing agencies get the resources that they need.
Right, and resources are so important, especially when you think about the fact that a lot of people are impacted. Before we get you, Dan, I would like to go to Barb, who is a high school principal, and you see these kids every day. I know that we're in the pandemic, so it's a little less, but tell us from an educational standpoint, what do you think is needed in order for us to reach the young people?
I think that we have to start talking to them a lot younger than we do currently. I think that we're very reactive. Our student that we have that started using at the youngest age, she took her first drink at 6 years old. There is addiction on both sides of her family. And so when we know that about our families or about ourselves, I think it's important to start talking to them when they're young, so that they know it's playing Russian roulette when you have it in your family. I love what Jim Wahlberg said. I got to watch a little bit of it before coming on here about opening up the conversations to start removing the stigma. And I think that the younger we start them, then they don't feel like, what's wrong with me, or I'm weird, or I'm different. They understand that it's a disease and it's a part of their life. If cancer ran in your family, you would start having those conversations early. If you get a lump, you need to let mom know, or if you start feeling funny. And we don't do that with drugs and alcohol. So I think that we have to start talking to them a lot younger than we do.
Right. And if you do that, like you said, I love how you said if you had cancer in your family, you were talking earlier, if you have that awareness, then maybe you think twice before you pick up a substance, knowing that the chances of you becoming addicted are greater. And possibly not doing that would then keep you out of the system. Because what we're seeing now, so many good people who maybe had never been in trouble with the law before, because they get this issue and they start getting desperate, then they start meeting law enforcement. And I know one of the big things with the DEA, Dan, is for you all to try to stop getting at the past. At times, are you feeling like you're making some leadway, or do you feel like this, you stop one problem or you stop one situation that could, potentially put drugs into the community, only to find another just pop up right after it? I mean, how is it for you guys on the front lines of this fight against these drugs?
Well, the men and women of DEA and our local partners are busy, right? We're busy every day, every week. The drugs, I've been here for 5 years, and the drugs, especially like fentanyl and other type prescription drugs, it's really increased. But what is my job as DEA here, as the head of DEA, is to get the message out and not only try to arrest those that are bringing this poison into our community, but it's to educate the public too. And so we put on programs such as the Opioid Youth Summit and doing programs like this to get the word out. Have those conversations. Like Mr. Wahlberg said earlier, start having those conversations. And that's what I preach or talk about during a lot of our conversations that we have with kids. And I agree with what she was saying, is that I don't think you can be too young to start having these conversations. I know we have these conversations in my household.
And how do you breach that topic? Because a lot of parents, they're thinking, this is my baby. My baby would never. Or I'm too young
that's my
to
wife.
have this conversation.
Right. That's my wife.
So what would you say to those moms and dads out there who feel that? Yeah. What would you say to them?
What would I say? Well, you know what? We have those conversations probably either daily or weekly, not because I'm in charge of the DEA, but, my son's a student athlete, and he plays soccer at a very high level. And you know what? He plays maybe 30 games in a 3 or 4 month period. It takes a toll on the body. But we have those conversations when he does get injured. We have a great doctor.
It's really important.
And
Ask Mike if he'll let me stay on his signal until then.
We have those conversations from the beginning, and it's continuous. And it may be my son's little baby, but we have those conversations. Rather have those conversations now than wishing that we'd have done something sooner.
Yeah, I have to say also, Dan, I have young children, 8 and 5, and we talk a lot about medicine, right? Like if someone has a fever, or if someone has an allergic reaction and needs some Benadryl or something, we talk about how important it is that I'm giving them that medicine because they need it. And if they didn't need it and they took it, it might make them sicker. And we talk a lot about the differences between prescription medication. They come in orange bottles usually that have your name on them and very specific instructions that are really important to follow. So student athletes for sure. But I think to Barb's point, I think also little kids, there are resources out there if parents are looking for them. You can talk to your children's adjustment counselor at school, maybe a health teacher. The DEA also, I know, has some great resources for parents.
You're 100%. And talking about that is that my son puts a lot of pressure on himself to get out there and perform. And if he's got an injury, I see it. Hey, it's a shortened school season. He's only got so much time before he goes to college or whatever. And he puts that pressure on him, and I can see that, maybe not with just him, but maybe other student athletes, of putting that pressure on themselves to want to get out there maybe sooner than what they should be.
Right. And so to that point, if you have a child that maybe has a back injury or some type of athletic injury, and they could, possibly start off with a legit prescription, or perhaps they go into the medicine cabinet, because that can happen too, and they self-medicate. How does a parent know? We have this question from Trisha. How many symptoms or signs should we be looking for? What type of signs are out there that should let you know, like, my child may be struggling with substance abuse?
So if I can go ahead and answer, just from our point, obviously trouble with the law, failing grades, changes in attitudes or behaviors. We're all creatures of habit. And so when there's something going on in our life, everybody around us can see it except for ourselves. So really just having those open lines of communication with your kids, starting when they're young, so that when they're going through this stuff, they don't feel uncomfortable talking to you about it, and just really watching that behavior. If something changes drastically, you need to start investigating as a parent.
Right. And so if you are a parent noticing that, what are some of the first steps you take? You're thinking, okay, I think this could be something. Is it a direct conversation? What do you do?
I think it's a direct conversation, and you need to go into it knowing that they're going to be hesitant, that they're probably going to lie to you, because they're typically scared. They don't want to get in trouble, but just having those open and honest conversations, and they need to be frank. I'm blessed. My kids are much older, but I have grandbabies now. And I went through my kids' stuff, not to invade their privacy, but that's part of my job as a parent. I'm not their friend, I'm their parent. And so it's my business to know what's going on with them at all times. So just open, honest, and be in their business.
Yeah. Agreed.
Be in their business. I like that. Be in their business. And when do you know that it's going to take drastic measures? They either need rehab, or let's remove them from the school because, perhaps they have friends who have gotten them into that situation. You have to do a change of scenery. When do you know, okay, it's time to take those steps?
Well, I think
that's for you, Barb.
I think it's different for every student. Obviously, if they're asking for help, the time is right now. If they're not asking for help, it's having those conversations, talking with their school counselor, reaching out for community resources. There's so many people out there that are willing to help. I have an amazing drug and alcohol counselor at my school. We're open to families. We will help anybody that we can. If somebody doesn't know how to broach those conversations with their children, we would be more than happy to do that. So I don't know that there's a right answer of when the time is. I think that the earlier that you can see what's going on and start trying to wrap services around. Also, we have in Las Vegas, the Harbor is amazing. They're an amazing resource. And if you take your child there, they load you up with services, wraparound services to try to help you. Las Vegas just offers so many things that the parent just needs to be, they just need to pursue, and it's out there, all of the help.
Yeah, I love that. It's important that there is help out there. And Ashley, in the event that someone passes away from this, because of course we know they're playing with something that's pretty deadly. I know that the Wahlberg Foundation does help a lot of parents and families cope with loss. What do you do to help these families with something that no parent should ever have to deal with, which is losing a child?
Yeah, so I think these families, unfortunately, we know a lot of families across the country. They're some of the most amazing people I've ever met. They're courageous, they're determined, they've turned this horrible, horrible loss into sort of determination to make sure that other people don't have to go through what they've gone through, which I find amazing. But I think people in recovery circles know that there's a great benefit to being around people who can really authentically relate to the experiences that you're going through. And I think the same seems to be true of people who are experiencing this very awful, unique grief. And there are groups of parents who support each other, many of them. One that I know well is Team Sharing. They have chapters across the country in different states, and there are, I'm sure, many other organizations like them. But being able to be around people who have experienced something similar is really, really valuable.
I bet. I want to circle back around to what we're talking about how perhaps your child has a legitimate prescription and that's how it starts. So perhaps they're kind of shopping in the medicine cabinet. I know, Dan, that the DEA does have a drug take back event coming up. Right. And can you tell us what that is and when it's going to take place?
It takes place this Saturday from 10 to 2. And it's going to be throughout Las Vegas at a lot of your metro substations, North Las Vegas and Henderson Police Department. No questions asked. You can drop your unused, unwanted prescription medicines off, and it's a safe way to dispose it. You know, the saying is, don't be your kid's drug dealer by leaving unused or unwanted prescription drugs in a medicine cabinet. So take that opportunity. We do it twice a year. It's this Saturday. Please take advantage of it. We dispose of it safely and securely.
All right. So everyone, hopefully you were writing that down. You can take advantage of it. And before we move on to more questions, I just want to give some people that are watching us who have questions, some resources in case they need them. You can call Crossroads if you need help at 702-382-7746. And that's 702-382-7746. You also have Care Triage. That number is 702-385-3330. Again, that's 702-385-3330. And then you can also go to drugfreelasvegas.org for a lot of information, because I know that some of our viewers here have asked about what can they do, where can they go. So thank you for those questions, guys. And then we have another question from another person that's watching right now. They said, what are you seeing, Dan, in the community? Are you seeing also a big problem with meth? And does that somehow correlate with people being one thing at first and then it progresses to perhaps those harder street drugs?
Well, I mean, methamphetamine is, we have more deaths or overdoses in Clark County than we do actually opioid deaths right now. It's been a rapid increase. I can just tell you within the first 5 months of COVID, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of overdoses also. I think it's one of those things that people are kind of pick your poison. Some people go down the road of methamphetamine. Some people go down the road of prescription drugs and abusing those. And it's either one path or the other on some of these. And unfortunately, both have deadly consequences.
Okay. And lastly, because our time is getting short, is there anything that you all would like to leave anyone watching this with? Just a little caveat before we sign off here. We'll start with you, Barb.
Well, first, I just want to thank you for bringing this to prime time, opening it up. It's such a problem in our community that we're here to help. missionhighschool.ccsd.net. My number is 702-799-7880. My personal cell phone is on our school website. So if there is a parent that just needs to talk, if they shoot me a text and say, hey, I have a question, I got your number off of the school website, I always respond. If it's in the middle of the night, I don't do it until the next morning. But there's so many people that love up on this school, love up on this community. We understand that it's a disease and we're just here to help. So anything that Mission High School can do or that I can do. I also wanted to mention that we do have a teen treatment program in Las Vegas, and that's Ignite Teen Treatment, and they're amazing. They're the only one in Las Vegas, so they're also there to help. But just pick up the phone and call, and don't be ashamed. We've all dealt with this in one way or another. So we don't want to ever have to help a parent bury a child. So we're there no matter what. Thank you.
All right, Ashley. Thank you. Thank you, Barb.
What I would like to say is I think it's important to remember that nobody sets out to be addicted, dependent on substances. I think people make certain choices sometimes, and that leads to the loss of choice, which is what I would define addiction as. And so I think it's important to remember that in our communities, we are all, individual people doing the best that we can, but we will do better if we help each other. And addiction is a disease that really flourishes in isolation, and this has been quite a year. So check in with the people that you know need other people. That's what I would say.
Right. Yeah, and you even see that meme. I don't know if you guys have seen it on social media. It even says, check on your strong friends, right? Because sometimes people, they think, oh, person's okay, but you really don't know the internal struggles that some people are going through because they're so good at putting on that mask of okayness, if you will, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's you see it all the time. Dan, I know for you all, especially being on the front lines, is there anything that you want Las Vegas to know about the continued fight to try to get drugs off the street and try to get the people the help they need? I think one thing that is unique is that a lot of people think law enforcement just enforces law, but as you said, you guys are also on that human side, connection side, trying to educate and really try to prevent it as well as just trying to eradicate.
Right. You know what? The best message I can say is that I know DEA realizes we can't arrest our way out of this problem, right? So how can we attack this problem? We can attack it by arresting those who do break the law, 100%. We can enforce a regulatory side and make sure that pharmacies, doctors, and everyone, pharmaceutical companies are in compliance. But probably the third and one of the most important things is that community involvement. I've been on DEA for over 25 years, and I've lived in a lot of different communities. I want everyone here to know in Vegas, your law enforcement partners, awesome partners together. Your community partners, where else? I challenge anybody to find out, where do you have UFC, Wahlbergs, the Las Vegas Raiders, Westgate casinos, your station, always coming together, Sands Corporation, coming together yearly, every 3 months, every month, trying to get that message out there. Clark County School District, got a great relationship with them also. It's amazing. I challenge you, try to find another community that has this great of a relationship where we come together and we talk about this problem to get the word out. I'm grateful to live in this community. I really am.
And we're grateful for all of you. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. Before we leave, just again, you can go to drugfreelasvegas.org if you want more information. You can also contact West Care Triage at 702-385-3030, as well as go to Crossroads at 702-382-7746. I think you all did best. This is not something that we need to be ashamed of, something that we need to shine a light on, and you all are doing that day in and day out, and we thank you for it and know it's going to help people who are watching us right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.